nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for watching us for our week in review. The volunteer program called The Watch continues to make the rounds in the downtown core, assisting locals while also providing a level of safety for others. As BCN's Angela Stewart explains, the program launched by the Lethbridge Police Service has developed quite a bit since hitting the streets 3 years ago.
Well, they are the eyes and ears for the Lethbridge Police, Fire and EMS, and everyday volunteers of the Watch program patrol the downtown streets, helping out members in the community, including the city's most vulnerable and even business owners. When it comes to helping businesses around the downtown, team lead Shauna Bolduc says volunteers will conduct business and location checks.
That's usually when they're having some issues around their business, whether that's loitering or negative behaviors. We can just kind of make a visual kind of deterrence around that location and just make sure that everything's running smoothly and we can help in the way we can. You see a variety of things. You see people that are struggling and sometimes going through the best day of their lives or the hardest day of their lives, and being able to be there for them, advocate for them, and help them in any way that we can. When we first started the program, it was pretty rough. We were kind of unsure on what we were doing.
Since May of 2019, when the program began, the Watch volunteers have been able to expand their efforts.
We've now made those connections, we made those relationships, and now we know what we can provide, what we can do, and where to send people when we're not sure if we could help them any further.
Bolduc adds the program remains primarily hands-off when it comes to certain situations like needle collection.
Needles, we call a hotline that is amazing, and they come and pick those up. Other things like biohazard cleanup, we could also call another phone number to get that cleaned up as well.
In 2020, teams attended more than 4,000 events throughout the downtown and surrounding areas, when just last year that number rose to 6,500, with about 80 of those requiring assistance from LPS.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Thanks, Angela. Now that it's spring, we're pulling out our bikes from storage, but the Lethbridge Police Service is reminding us to always keep those bikes locked up and secured. Earlier this week, police were able to use a bike bait technique and managed to arrest an offender who stole a bike after it was locked to a street sign.
We recognize that there's a myriad of different locks out there and things like that. Those U-bolt locks seem to be the best deterrent. This is the most difficult to break through, to kind of cut off, things like that. Ensure that your bikes are placed up against or attached to an immovable object. Not trees, some fence posts, things like that are sometimes not the best, as they can be removed, thus can kind of bring the bike away with them. Well-lit areas, heavy traffic, ensuring that, especially at nighttime, if the criminals can't see the bike, they can't steal the bike. So to have them in a locked shed, possibly bring them inside the home, things like that.
So far this year, 95 bikes have been reported stolen. Beginning in October and running through Remembrance Day in Lethbridge, you'll see a wide array of banners honoring veterans. The Lethbridge Legion's Salute Our Veterans project will celebrate the soldiers who served and paid the ultimate sacrifice to make sure that we can enjoy the freedoms we have today. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the details on this colorful new project.
Now, in the first year, 91 banners were placed up in 5 specific locations, all of which have military significance.
The faces and names of veterans will be on display on the banners, along with a short write-up showcasing each of their stories. You can visit lethbridgeveteransbanners.ca to view information on each veteran, and banner applications for the project have to be submitted before June 30th.
We want to engage our community in honoring our local veterans, both past and present, in a colorful and vibrant way as we move towards Remembrance Day. Hopefully this will catch the imagination of our local citizens. And it's also a way to help educate students and citizens on some of the faces and stories of service of our veterans.
The project was approved unanimously by Lethbridge City Council, and $20,500 was allocated to the program from the Council Contingencies Fund.
This will put a smile on people's faces seeing these banners. These are members that have served our country proud, and many of them did not come home. Who could be against something that is exciting as this? So the work that the Legion has done is amazing. We're a part just to help with some of that funding, but this is exciting. We can't wait to see what it rolls out when it's full in here in a few years.
Legion staff say the goal is to have the project moving into 2023 and 2024 as well. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
After the break, we take a look at the story of the week, the stepping down of Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. Keep it right here. The province is still buzzing following the resignation announcement from Jason Kenney. Kenney announced that he's stepping down after only receiving 51.4% support with the recent UCP leadership review. Kenney says he understands that a party divided against itself cannot stand.
Friends, it's clear that the past 2 years were deeply divisive for our province, our party, and our caucus. But it is my fervent hope that in the months to come, we all move on past the division of COVID.
I am personally sad to see Mr. Kenney leave. I believe that he was a very strong leader and he had the potential to really move this province forward. But the results are what they are, and as a board member, we'll accept them and look forward to the leadership race coming up in the near future.
I respect Jason's decision. It's going to be tough probably going forward for a bit. A lot of people, a lot of work into it, but we need to unite as a party and we need to find a leader that can do that because right now we're divided. So
we'll have more about the UCP and Jason Kenney's leadership vote later on in the show. Well, UCP caucus chair Nathan Neudorf says Kenney will remain on until a new leader is announced. In a statement, Neudorf said the United Conservative Caucus had a rigorous decision and debate about the future of our party and government. In that spirit, we have affirmed Premier Jason Kenney's continued leadership of our caucus and government until such time as a new leader is chosen, the timing of which will be determined by the United Conservative Party. End quote. Well, the leadership vote for Kenney was the top of most people's minds. Premier Kenney had been in Washington, D.C. earlier in the week addressing the U.S. Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, saying that Alberta's energy is some of the cleanest around.
Senators, replacing conflict oil imports with Canadian energy is not a threat to the environment. We take seriously the need to cut emissions and to address climate change. Alberta's oil and gas producers and pipeline companies have some of the world's highest ESG rankings. Alberta was the first place in North America to implement carbon pricing. Through massive investments in clean tech, we've reduced the carbon footprint of an average barrel of Alberta oil by 36% since the year 2000 to below the global average for heavy oil. Our oil sands producers are committed to achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions in their operations by 2050, in part through a big expansion of our world-leading carbon capture, utilization, and storage infrastructure.
In other news, one of the 4 men arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit murder related to the blockade at the Coutts border crossing in February had his bail hearing on Thursday. BCN's Naveen Day was in attendance. Now, Naveen, this hearing was to determine if Chris Carvers was suitable for release, right?
That's right, Jeanette. Crown Prosecutor Matt Delitowitz submitted evidence heard by Justice Jonah Kubik. Now, I can't go into details of the evidence that was submitted due to a court-ordered publication ban, but the Crown argued that Chris Carvers was a leader in the blockade at Coutts and was heavily armed with an abundance of firearms, ammunition, and body armor, and was prepared to go to war with police and authorities. The Crown argued that Carvers may flee if he's released on bail due to a lack of respect for authority. Pictures of the firearms found in 3 trailers were exhibited, as well as cell phone communications from wiretaps and messaging records, as well as testimony from undercover officers. Defense counsel Balfour Durr and Carvers' mother, Betty Carvers, responded to the Crown's arguments, stating that Chris did not actually have a plot to kill and that he was gullible and prone to puffery and exaggerated his claims. During his mother's time on the witness stand, the defendant appeared emotional, and I saw him wiping tears from his face. Mrs. Carvers said that her son was inspired by his grandparents who served in the Canadian military and was only interested in defending the freedoms of Canadians. The judge will deliver her decision on May 27th. Jeanette?
Thanks so much, Naveen. Prosecutors believe the organizer of the Freedom Convoy, Tamiras Leach of Medicine Hat, should go back to jail until her trial for breaching her bail conditions. Leach was initially denied bail after her arrest during the massive trucker protest in Ottawa last February. She was released in March after that decision was reviewed. The Crown says Leach has violated one of her bail conditions by agreeing to accept an award from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, a nonprofit group that supported the convoy. Coming up after the break, we'll have more on the stepping down of Jason Kenney from Cypress Medicine Hat MLA Drew Barnes, and be sure to follow us on Facebook to stay up to date on the stories that we've been covering. Stay with us.
I was not surprised that Premier Kenney received, a vote from the majority of Albertans that, want him to leave.
Reaction to Jason Kenney's resignation resounded across the country. As Micah Quinn explains, there are some who have already put their names forward, vying to become the new leader of the United Conservative Party.
I hope that we can have a cordial leadership contest where we recognize at the end of it that we're all going to be supporting each other on a single team. That is going to be my approach.
Former Wild Rose Party leader Danielle Smith says she will be seeking the UCP leadership after Jason Kenney announced his resignation as premier on Wednesday evening.
There is sort of a tendency to think now that I'm decided that I'm going to jump back into politics, seeking the leadership of the UCP, that this is just a continuation of my last political life. And I would encourage you not to think that way, because so much has changed since 2015. I'm a mainstream conservative. I've seen a lot of dialogue going on about whether we are going to be swinging to the left or swinging to the right. We're all Albertans. We all want the best for Alberta. And I think that you will find that my campaign is going to be centered around putting Alberta interests, and Albertans first.
Smith joins Brian Jean as candidates that have put their names forward, vying for the now vacant premier spot. Kenney resigned after receiving only 51.4% of the vote within the UCP party.
Friends, I truly believe that we need to move forward united. We need to put the past behind us. And our members, a large number of our members, have asked for an opportunity to clear the air through a leadership election.
Here in Lethbridge, Mayor Blaine Higgin reacted to the news of Kenney's decision to leave his role as premier.
Our role as council here in Lethbridge is to work with any leader, any level of government, and we want to make sure that we're there at the table. We're building those relationships.
Rachel Notley, the leader of the NDP, says she was unfazed when Kenney made the decision to resign.
We watched them be entirely distracted to the point of paralysis and inaction by that conversation. And we made a decision as a caucus and as a party a long time ago to not let ourselves be distracted or paralyzed by that conversation, but instead to focus on what Albertans need right now.
It's still up in the air as to when the UCP will choose an interim leader for the party. Bridge City News reached out to Brian Jean for comment on his decision to run for the UCP leadership, but we did not hear back before our broadcast deadline. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
With more on reaction to Jason Kenney's move, I spoke with MLA Drew Barnes, who was ousted from the UCP for criticizing Kenney on his lockdown measures. So were you surprised by what happened Wednesday night?
I was not surprised that Premier Kenney received, a vote from the majority of Albertans that, want him to leave. He's lost the trust and confidence of the majority of Albertans a long time ago.
And how did you feel about his resignation? Was that surprising?
I was a little surprised by the resignation, only because he had said if he got 50% plus one, he had shown in the past that he was willing to twist and turn to hang on to his leadership and his premiership. But in hindsight, it makes absolute total sense. The fact that 3 years ago, 55% of Albertans voted for him. And now he can't even get 52% out of his own club to vote for him, with the allegation of 4,600 memberships being bought by 6 credit cards. He's clearly lost the trust and confidence of Albertans, and he needs to move on.
So, Drew, what do you think is next for this party?
Well, next for this party is to ensure that Premier Kenney steps aside. My former caucus colleagues need to choose a new interim leader. That new interim leader needs to set the direction for the permanent leader, 4, 5, or 6 months from now. And that direction is a real willingness to listen to Albertans, a real willingness to handle what's important to Albertans. Our utility costs are through the roof. Let's get that rebate to Albertans immediately. Our insurance costs, our cost of living, our inflation is through the roof. This Alberta government needs to listen to Alberta families and start to make life affordable and give people economic freedom.
Who do you think could step up to be the next interim leader? Any ideas?
I think what's incumbent on the interim leader is to listen to Albertans and set the path for the future leader, and we'll see what that brings.
Is there any chance you would go back and join the UCP again? I know it was Kenney who wanted you out of there, so what's next for you, Drew?
Yeah, I absolutely would not join the UCP under Premier Kenney, but I am very much willing and continuing to work for Conservative unity, to continuing to work to make sure that the NDP is not re-elected. And I would say at this point in time that if my former colleagues, want to talk about healing for Alberta, healing for Conservatives, I would be all ears.
When we come back, Hal Roberts speaks with Wild Rose Independence leader Paul Hinman. Stay with us. Welcome back. The leader of the Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta has also spoken out following the announcement of Jason Kenney's resignation. Paul Hinman says there was enough turmoil within the party that perhaps it was time for a change. Paul Hinman joined Hal Roberts earlier this week from his home in Welling, Alberta.
Paul, what do you think led to this point that Kenney only received 51.4% support within the leadership review?
Well, I want to say it starts off with that what he was sharing with Albertans, and the vision that he was sharing was one of I want to say accountability, putting Albertans first. We're going to stand up to Ottawa. We understand the importance of individual freedoms. He was saying all the proper things that I want to say Conservatives understand and realize what makes a country great. They understand the principles and the purpose of a constitution to protect individuals' rights, their life, their liberty, their property, their pursuit of happiness. And over the last 2 years, he's basically betrayed us and went into a socialist, centralist government that says, we know how to run your lives better than you do. We'll tell you which businesses can and can't be closed. We'll tell you what medical treatments you must participate in if you're going to function in society. And he put all of these, I want to say, draconian mandates on the people that just turned the majority of Conservative supporters against him. And as he said, he was going to look for a new base. Well, he didn't find one.
With the UCP as divided as it is right now, do you think this will help bolster more support for your group, the Alberta Wild Rose Independence Party?
Well, ultimately, absolutely. But the sad thing is, whenever you're in a broken, toxic, dysfunctional relationship, when the one person says, oh, I'm sorry, and backs out, human nature is that, oh, we're going to go back in and try and fix it. We've been trying to fix Confederation for 115, 117 years. It's not working. We actually need to stand up for Albertans. We can't have a prime minister or the World Health Organization of the United Nations saying that we're going to shut down your oil sands. We're going to shut down your beef industry. We're going to impose health restrictions and regulations on you. We actually need to be strong and free. And the UCP, in their background, that they're a federalist party, and they're not going to stand up for Alberta. And I don't think any new candidates coming forward are going to do that within the party.
So explain to our viewers what your mandate is as a party. Do you really want Alberta to separate from Canada?
Alberta is in a broken, dysfunctional, toxic relationship with Ottawa. Our constitution is not there for what I'm going to say for the individual. It's set up very much for bullying of the majority, tyranny of the majority over the minority. And they bully Alberta. We're overtaxed, we're overregulated, and we are not going to be able to get out from underneath this bullying without becoming a sovereign nation. And so what our party is all about is receiving a mandate from the people to stand up and exercise our full autonomy and to show Albertans that, look, this is what we can do if we're collecting our own taxes, if we have our own police force, if we have our own environmental regulations, and then we don't have Ottawa making the decisions for us, and we can have our own, export agreements and deals. That we can actually have a free trade because we don't need to protect any Eastern industries, and to show Albertans how much benefit we'd have when we exercise our full autonomy, and then to hold a referendum to allow Albertans to decide, do we want to stay inside of Canada or do we need to be a sovereign nation? But for me, we need to be a sovereign nation if we're ever going to be strong and free again, because they want to shut us down and they want Alberta to be a have-not province.
Now, under your leadership, the Alberta Alliance and the Wildrose Party of Alberta merged in 2008. Do you potentially see another merge happening with the UCP as to not split the right vote?
Everybody has been asking me about that, and we're always open and looking at those things. But the bottom line, the UCP has been taken over again by those backroom boys, the inner circle, and they're federalists, and they want to appease and be part of Canada, and they're willing to give up the House to be part of them, and we just can't do that. But never say never in politics. Interesting concept, but I just feel like we need to start a fresh start with a party that actually has principles and policies that align with Alberta's interests, and not trying to adjust and to compensate so that we can win some seats in Quebec or in Ontario, which is what the federal parties do. We just can't be part of that. For me, Canada is the Titanic. It's hit the iceberg. It's taking on water, it's sinking, but the captain continues to tote, oh, we're unsinkable. This is great. We're part of a great new world.
After the break, we hear from two Calgary filmmakers who documented the Ottawa Freedom Rally. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. We will be right back. Well, it's been over 3 months since the Freedom Convoy and rally in our nation's capital, and there are two Calgarians who spent their time in Ottawa digitally documenting the events during that time. Jeremy Rigo and Andrew Peloso joined me earlier this week to talk about their experiences in Ottawa and what people can expect from the film. What was your initial reaction when you first arrived in Ottawa?
I didn't realize the amount of foot traffic and amount of people that came into Ottawa for that first weekend. It felt, I don't have a final number, but it really felt like the population of Ottawa had doubled. Mm-hmm. And it was really beautiful because the heart of this movement, capturing it during the early days before we saw any government action, it was really just based around freedom. And everyone's personal choice to make decisions for themselves and their family that they believe are decisions of conscience. And that was quite beautiful to see. It certainly gave me hope.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned, of course, you're talking about the beauty of people coming together, but of course there were a lot of points of contention with this convoy as well. And I guess the impact of that the convoy maybe had on the citizens of Ottawa. So what were your recollections of the interactions with locals while you were there?
Honestly, the truth is that we tried to find people that were upset about the Freedom Convoy being there. And there were a lot of people that were coming down to the like Wellington Street just to see what was going on because they were hearing about things on the news. And in general, I would say the majority of people came down expecting to be upset. Of Ottawa citizens came down expecting to be upset, and then realized what was actually going on, that the streets were clean, that there were bouncy castles, that it was like a parade. It was a celebration for Canada. It was like Canada Day on steroids. And then they were coming down every single opportunity they had. After work, they'd come down. They give out food, they give out cash, they try to their best to encourage. We tried to get as many people on camera as possible talking about their experiences, as many Ottawa citizens as possible talking about their experiences. We did get a few, but for the most part, people were afraid to talk on camera.
What are you hoping that viewers will take away from watching it?
feel like the society has done a half decent job at polarizing us and putting us at ends. Our call to the people watching this film is that we can come back to a middle ground where people can feel unified as citizens of Canada, as people of the world, and have hope that we can live in a society where we are free to disagree and still love each other. That's our hope for people that are watching this film.
Wow. And did you mention that chapter 1, you've already got that completed?
Yeah, we released chapter 1 this Sunday. Since releasing, it's been only a couple days, and we're getting close to over 3 million minutes streamed on our website, just organically. We haven't advertised this at all. So it's very evident that Canada, you can just see the map lighting up with different people and IP addresses watching this film.
Did you say 3,000 minutes? Or 3 million minutes? 3
million minutes streamed in the last 2 days.
And how long is chapter 1?
Chapter 1's about 39 minutes long.
Okay, interesting. That puts that in perspective a little bit. So far, what have been the reactions from people who have seen chapter 1?
You should see our inbox. Our inbox is completely lit up. I haven't seen one negative response to what we put out there. And people are sharing it like wildfire. There's yes, absolutely that 3 million minutes that are viewed on our website, but the way that we posted this with that download feature, we were having different groups having live watch parties and streaming the show, and they have been for the past 3 days. So the amount of people that must have seen this already is huge, staggering numbers, more than we ever imagined when we first left Calgary and joined this convoy. So it's pretty remarkable.
Up next, tips for home fire safety with Fire Prevention Officer Troy Hicks. Keep it right here.
We have other provinces here in Canada that there's actually fines. People can contact the police, take the license plate number down, and people are issued very hefty fines for throwing cigarettes and stuff outside their windows.